Hey everyone, it's Caesar, host of the Creepy Fox podcast, and welcome back to another episode of Scary Stories. Now, real quickly, if you would like to go ahead and skip and jump right into the episode, you are more than welcome to do so. There will be timestamps. You're more than welcome to skip ahead. I just wanted to take just a couple of minutes right now in the intro just to tell you guys about where I've been, what's been going on, all that good stuff, because you've probably been wondering, well, where the heck has he been? We haven't seen an upload from him in quite a while. The biggest reason why, and I did announce this on my last couple videos I uploaded here on the channel, I was going to be taking a break from uploading, and this is just, it was due to burnout, just a lot of burnout from making videos, and also just a lot of changes that have been affecting specifically scary stories narrators like myself. I know it's been happening to a lot of my fellow narrators. You might probably, if you follow other scary stories narrators in the last few months, you've probably seen what I'm talking about. And it's unfortunate that this is happening. From what I know, it's all an automated system, and so that's why a lot of channels have been getting hit, if you will. It sucks because it really seems to be a situation where you can do an appeal and all that, but it doesn't matter because like sometimes you'll get through to YouTube, other times you don't. It's a whole mess, it's a whole headache, and so that's one of the reasons why I kind of stepped away from YouTube, just because, like I said, a lot of automation, a lot of AI, a lot of this weird thing going on where people, obviously they don't really like the AI slop, and I hate it personally as well. But it's so strange to see that a lot of these AI videos end up getting tens of thousands, sometimes even hundreds of thousands of views, even though I always see comments about people saying, oh, they don't want AI videos and all that. So it's really weird because then those videos get pushed out and videos created by actual humans like me don't get pushed out at all. It's it's all backwards and stuff. But I do have a video for you guys today. This is going to be a remaster of an old video of mine that I uploaded about 6 years ago. The audio, as I look back on it, the audio was, it wasn't exactly the best, let's just say. So I decided, to come back. I would go ahead and re-record the stories. I would go ahead and record some footage and get that all together for you guys on an episode of the Creepy Fox podcast. Another big reason why I have not uploaded is due to story submissions. I know I announced that, hey, I was going to be taking a hiatus and I was going to be taking a break, but I did not expect listeners to take it quite literally and that they wouldn't, want to share stories. Because it kind of seemed like overnight we were always, having subscribers reach out and, I would work with them to be able to cover their experiences on stories and videos. But overnight, it's like the well dried, so to speak, and now it's been almost 4 months and I haven't received a single story submission. So if you do have a story you'd like to go ahead and talk to me about to get featured on a future episode, then like I said, please make sure to send that in, because I really don't want to go another 3, 4, 5 months without any sort of uploads. I can definitely upload other sorts of videos, but the problem is people aren't gonna watch that. So I know you guys are here for the stories, and I get that, right? But yeah, without further ado, please enjoy, and I'll see you next time. Peace.
This happened in Anchorage in the fall of 2015, and I was 18 years old at the time. It was the weekend, and temperatures were in the low 30s. A light snow could be seen falling just outside the window, and there was just this overall feeling, which I want to describe as just peacefulness and also bliss. I was sitting on the couch, and I was watching a movie with my German Shepherd Atlas. After a bit, I got the urge for some hot chocolate. You see, there's a small coffee shop, which is roughly a 10-minute walk from my house, and well, they could easily satisfy my sweet tooth. So I head into the kitchen, and I tell my parents I was going to take Atlas for a walk, and we were going to go get some hot chocolate. My parents told me that they were going to be heading over to Fred Meyer's. It's a supermarket chain up here in Alaska, and they'd say they'd be back in roughly an hour or so. Now, being the typical protective parents that, well, my parents were, they did tell me to come back right away and not to spend too much time outdoors. So I grab Atlas's leash and we make it to the coffee shop just fine. All the patrons fell in love with Atlas, and they wanted to take pictures with him. He's actually really friendly, so I stayed a little bit longer than usual talking to some of the fellow dog owners. About an hour or so later, the sun had set, and I realized I should probably be heading back, or my parents were going to get angry with me. I thanked the barista for the hot chocolate, and so we begin the walk back home. Anyway, I'm roughly a few blocks from my house, when all of a sudden I start to hear the sound of crunching snow from behind me. This was about the same time I looked at Atlas, and all the hairs on his back stood straight up. He then began growling, which caught my attention. Well, when I look back, I can see somebody in a hoodie, and they've got the hood covering their face, and they're slowly making their way toward me. Not creepy at all, right? They had their hands in their hoodie pockets too, which already added to the sketchy situation. Thinking perhaps maybe it's just a neighbor or someone that lives nearby. Well, I continue walking, but here's the thing. Atlas is still growling. He even comes to a stop, and try as I did to pull him away, he just was not budging at all. Well, little did I know that Atlas was sensing something, and he was sensing something very, very wrong. What a good boy. What's his name? I hear the stranger ask in a low, deep voice. Oh, his name is Atlas. And yeah, he sure is a good boy, I responded back with a sense of urgency. Would it be okay if I took a picture with you two? I just love dogs, and I love their owners too. Maybe some other time, pal. I need to get back home before my parents get back. Revealing the house was empty. Well, it wasn't exactly the smartest idea, and it was a huge mistake. Well, alright, fine, that's okay with me. I guess I'll see you around sometime, kid, and I'll ask you then for a picture. Atlas finally lets me pull him closer to me, and we soon lose sight of the strange man. My parents still weren't home, which meant I was going to be saved from their parental wrath. That, however, still didn't stop my nerves from running wild. I mean, yeah, sure, I was in the safety of my own house, but I couldn't stop thinking of the man from just minutes earlier. I just wish the story was going to end there for you all. But anyway, I get a text from my parents, and they're telling me they had stopped at Wendy's, which was why they were taking so long to get home. They asked me if I wanted anything, but I tell them, nah, it's fine, I'm good. Well, no more than 10 minutes after that, I sat in the kitchen using my laptop to work on some homework. That's when I could hear the sound of footsteps crunching outside on the front lawn. Now, knowing my parents were going to need some help bringing in the groceries, well, I put on some snow boots and then I unlocked the door. But this was a huge mistake. The guy in the hoodie had returned, and I could see him peeking into one of the bedroom windows. Worst off, he's got a knife now, and I suddenly let out a yelp, which grabs the attention of the guy in the hoodie. Luckily for me though, I'm able to close and lock the door behind me, which he's just a few inches away from reaching into my house. Just then though, Atlas comes running into the kitchen, and he begins barking up a storm. What do you want? I'm going to call the cops on you. What I heard him say in between the barking and what I said, it was chilling. On second thought, I'd rather you come home with me. You're just too cute. I can't resist. Something like that. He then starts pounding at the door like a madman, and I'm now on the phone calling the police. But nothing of short of a miracle, my parents are pulling up just at the time that this is happening. I then can hear the man curse under his breath, and he begins running away, snow crunching with every one of his steps. My dad notices him and yells at him, but he doesn't run after him. Anyway, when police arrived, I gave them my statement, and they promised they would do some extra patrols in the area, and they will look for people who match the description. Unfortunately though, since I couldn't really see any facial details the entire time, plus you should probably know that it was dark at the time, there wasn't much I could do to provide a description. To this day, I've never seen him, nor have I had any sort of creepy encounter such as that one. I thank Atlas every day for his sense of smell, as well as his instincts to detect people who have bad intentions against me. This story, well, it's actually quite frightening to be honest, and it surprises me just how far some people will go out there. This occurred in the early 2000s, when my parents and I were on a road trip to visit my grandparents, who lived roughly 3 hours away from us. This takes place in Alabama, bear in mind. I was just shy of my 17th birthday at the time. Anyway, about 2 hours into the road trip, we just finished having lunch at a McDonald's, and my dad had the bad urge to go use the restroom and pee. Now, it would have been quite a detour having to return back to the rest area where the McDonald's was, which is why my father just decided, well, you know what, let's just wait for the next gas station, which was only about a 10-mile ride from our current location. When we arrived, there was only one other vehicle at the time, a truck if I remember correctly, and the man standing beside it was pumping gas. We pulled in, and my father immediately walks into the gas station convenience store to ask for the restroom. My mom decided that she was going to go in there to pick up some candy for us. I opted to stay in the car, as I remember I was playing Pokemon Ruby at the time on my Game Boy Advance. I forget exactly how much time had passed, since I was so focused on the game, bear in mind. But all of a sudden, I hear somebody knocking at the window beside me. It was a man that I hadn't seen yet. We sort of just did this awkward stare down, when suddenly he tried pulling open the door. But no luck, as it was locked. Thank God it was. Then, well, I kid you not, he takes out a knife and demands I open the door now, or he was going to make his way in by force one way or another. I'm pretty much screaming at the top of my lungs at this point, and I'm trying to get my parents' or maybe somebody else's attention. But there's no one hearing me. Again, I remind you that this happened in broad daylight, so the guy was seriously confident in his skills. Luckily though, I didn't have to wait too long because I see my mom and my dad walk out of the convenience store. My dad, like a protective lion, charges toward the man, who tries to get away. Now, I was actually scared because I wasn't sure if my father had seen the knife or not, and I didn't want him to get stabbed at all. But none of this mattered, since my dad ends up tackling the man nonetheless, and the knife falls out of his grasp. My mom then took the opportunity to call the cops, but little did we know that Lady Luck happened to be on her side. As my dad and the man are wrestling each other, a highway patrol vehicle pulls up to the gas station, and the officer comes over to break up the fight. Thank God, with a couple of eyewitnesses who were inside the convenience store. Well, my dad got his name cleared, and we ended up leaving some short time later. Now, I'm not sure what happened exactly to the guy, but the last sight I saw as we pulled away was the man being placed in handcuffs and being put in the back of the police cruiser. This happened a few years ago during the summertime. My friend Ronnie and I, well, we were really into filmmaking, and we were trying to make our very own horror movie. However, we soon came to the realization that we were going to need to get a lot of B-roll. This included some night shots, which, as the name suggests, had to be done at night. So Ronnie decided to stay over at my house. That way it saved the back and forth driving trip. At around 8 p.m., we get into my truck and we drive about 20 minutes to a trail, which we actually used to run on when we were in high school. We chose that location because, you see, there's some really cool underground tunnels that we thought would be perfect for one of our scenes. In order to get to said tunnels, however, we had to park and then walk about roughly 5 minutes on the trail to a section that goes downhill. Now, there are some train tracks which you have to follow, and not too long after that, you've reached the tunnel destination. Now, admittedly, going out there in the middle of the night, it's not exactly the best idea we had. You don't need to tell us otherwise. But there we were, these 20-year-old college dudes who thought that they had everything in the world and nothing could possibly scare us. After all, we've got our flashlights and courage keeping us company, and we got some knives as well. We arrive without any issue, and then we start to take some pictures with the flash. This was for the very first time that we realized, well, we might not actually be alone out here. At first, it started with tree branches being stepped on, but we assumed it was just one of us creating the noise in the process of getting here. However, we realized that there was no tree branches anywhere near our feet. Well, that's kinda weird, right? We wrote it off as just a squirrel or something. But the thing is, no less than 20 seconds later, we notice a large figure stand up from just a bit of ways inside of the tunnel. At this point, our eyes had just adjusted to the dark, which was why we were able to see it. Pointing our flashlight in their direction, it reveals a homeless, disheveled man, and he's got a crowbar? "What are you two kids doing out here?" We did not respond, so we grab our things and we start to run. But then we began to get surrounded by more people. Some of them had knives, others had baseball bats, and of course the one with a crowbar. We were honestly thinking that we were going to have to fight our way out of this, or we were going to get killed. "Get them." That's what we heard the one from the tunnel command to the rest, as about 5 of them began charging their way toward my friend and I, who are now visibly shaking. Thankfully though, at the last second, we're actually able to jump out of the way and we start booking it back from the way we came from. Now, we actually didn't have to wait too long. As you see, we looked back and they're actually starting to walk back from where they came from. And thus, that was pretty much all there was to it. We ended up driving back to my place, and we decided it was a better idea to stick to filming B-roll in one of our backyards instead. Update. We did end up telling the police about them, but as of writing this, there hasn't been any updates on whether or not they were found. I'm assuming that they might have been drifters or hitchhikers, or I guess like I mentioned before, homeless people, and maybe they just decided to camp out there thinking that nobody was going to bother them. I'm not too sure, but we like to think that they might have just been trying to scare us or something. As I look back on it, it would have been really nice if we recorded them, but we were so caught up with our emotions. Well, we did not think about doing that. Aren't sleepovers supposed to be fun? After all, it's an opportunity for you to stay up late, and you're playing video games, watching movies, eating snacks, or you're telling scary stories like I am. But that shouldn't mean the scary stories become a reality, right? Well, I want to take you back to some time in the mid-2000s when I stayed over at my friend Jamie's house. We're both female, by the way, and we were sophomores in high school at the time. Anyway, on Thursday of that particular week, Jamie told me during biology class that her parents were going to be away for the weekend to celebrate their wedding anniversary. So she asked me if I wanted to sleep over and keep her company, as she really didn't want to spend the weekend with her grandparents, since she told me they're really boring. Like any good friend, I agreed as I had nothing better else to do, and it was looking like I wasn't going to be getting much homework. But I spoke too soon because at the end of the biology class, well, we got assigned a paper which was due Monday. Thanks, Josh, for reminding the teacher about that. Jeez. Thankfully, though, it wasn't that difficult, and Jamie and I were able to complete that Friday night. Fast forward to Saturday, and we had woken up at around 3 in the afternoon. For lunch, or I guess you could say late dinner, however you want to call it, we decided to order a pizza from Domino's. Meanwhile, I stepped into the shower. Fast forward to around 7 p.m., and Jamie wanted to go walk in the forest that's behind her house. I guess I should mention that Jamie kind of lived in the middle of nowhere. There were neighbors, but the closest one was about a mile away or so. This is important because she also happens to live at the end of a long dirt road, which means visitors are very, and I mean very rare. Anyway, we spent about 20 minutes walking and gossiping about the latest rumors at school when I finally get the urge to pee. So we began to make our way back to Jamie's house. Nothing really seemed out of the ordinary as we made our way in, and I head into the restroom. Meanwhile, Jamie was in the living room turning on the TV. Well, no less than 30 seconds later, I hear a loud crash, which made me jump out of my shoes. Had Jamie fallen over or bumped into a table and had something fallen over and crashed? Well, I quickly washed my hands and I exited the restroom. It's, however, though, where I'm met with one of the most frightening sights of my entire life. Jamie is standing with her hands up, frozen in fear, as I soon come to the realization what exactly is happening and why Jamie has her hands up. You there, put your hands up, and don't you dare make any sudden movements. As I'd still been in the hallway, well, I couldn't really see to the right of where I was, but as soon as I walk into the living room, there were two masked intruders with handguns. That's when they gave me said command. What happens in the next moments, which really felt like an eternity, were the masked men telling us not to move or make a noise, as they grab some of their large bags and run out of the home. We then watched them escape through the front door as they jumped into the side of a waiting dark van. The van then drives away seconds later after that. Jamie and I stood there shaking and crying, trying to comprehend what had just happened. Well, we must have sat there on the couch for roughly 15 minutes or so, before we finally snapped out of our fear and we called the cops. Unfortunately for us though, it took them about 30 minutes to arrive, which by that point gave the home burglars plenty of time to get away. All the police told us they could do was make a report and try to look for their vehicles that matched the description that we gave them. To this day though, those men have never been found, and the jewelry and money they made off with, well, it has never been returned to Jamie nor her family. Edit. For those wondering, we had left the door unlocked as we had no spare keys since all the keys were lost at the time. That was the reasoning as to why the door was unlocked, and how they most likely got in. It's just crazy that out of all the homes, they came after Jamie's. Some friends have told me they might have been staking out the house or something, but neither Jamie's family nor hers said they saw any suspicious activity, or even vehicles in the weeks or days leading up to the incident. Hey, you want to hear something creepy? Well, I'm sure you do. After all, if you're someone like me who gets a kick out of these sorts of stories, then I'm pretty sure you won't be disappointed. It's just a shame I had to experience this firsthand, but I laugh about it now, so it's okay. Occurring less than a year ago when writing this story, I was just clocking out of work. I was tired and exhausted after a long day of dealing with rowdy customers. I work at Costco, and for whatever reason, it didn't matter how nice I was to people. People were just not listening to anything I said. Anyway, I arrive home with some Chipotle and I put on some Netflix to help unwind. Once I had my fill of entertainment, I went ahead and stepped into the shower to try and wash away my stress. Now, before I continue, I want to mention a quick little detail. Now, it might not seem so important right now, but trust me, by the end of this, you're going to understand why I even brought it up. I have a small basement where the washing machine and dryer are located, but along with those common necessities, there is a small window too. It's just large enough let's just say if I wanted to crawl out of it to reach the front lawn, there's a screen, which means it's not going to be very easy to crawl in there. Well, I guess you could say in or out. This was important because I didn't have air conditioning in the basement. So anytime I needed to go down there to get something, any bit of air would be greatly appreciated. Of course, if I didn't need to be in the basement, the windows were going to be locked. Well, before I had stepped into the shower, I had gone down to the basement to put some clothes in the wash. In my laziness, or I guess just being dumb, I had opened the window in the process, but I'd forgotten to close it. This brings us back to said shower. You see, I suddenly heard a sudden loud crash, which gave me chills. I was home alone, and I have no pets. So, what exactly was I hearing then? I thought about it for roughly 3 minutes as I turned the water off and listened, but I heard nothing. I just wrote it off as a neighbor moving around some garbage bins and soon changed, as I opted to head to the basement to put my clothes in the dryer. But here's when things got, creepy. The first thing I noticed were a couple of the boxes I had down here for storage. They had fallen over. They weren't exactly light. They would have required force to move, and surely there was not enough wind to move them. This was when I noticed the screen for my basement window was missing. Alarm bells are starting to ring in my head. as I begin making my way toward the staircase. But as I'm about halfway up there, I can see them. With a light illuminating a small portion of the basement, I'm able to see someone in a hoodie sitting in the corner with a glass pipe, and it appears that they have a small lighter too. Naturally, I freaked out, and I book it to my living room, where I grabbed my cell phone that was charging, and I called my dad from the safety of my car, who luckily lives just a couple of blocks away from me. My dad, that is. When he got there, he stormed into my house with his shotgun, where he finds a man going through my refrigerator. Police arrived shortly after, and they make an arrest. We later found out he was a junkie, and that wasn't the first time he had gotten into trouble in our area. Guess that explains it all, huh? Anyway, after said event, I ended up barricading the basement window once and for all, and all the locks on the doors were changed too. My dad would later install a security system for my house, which, thank God, has no longer detected any more crazy creeps trying to break into my house. This happened to my best friend and I around 7 years ago. We're from Germany, by the way, and unfortunately we don't have a proper explanation for what exactly we stumbled upon. For context, we were in our early 20s and we were attending university. We had a total of 2 classes together during our time at that school, and one in particular was a science class. Our professor had assigned people into groups of 2, where we were supposed to write a report about plants and flowers. Attached to the assignment were supposed to be pictures of 10 different types of fauna. My best friend, who we will refer to as Lucas in this, thought of a forest that was about an hour and a half away from our city. I knew exactly the location he was talking about. It was where there was a major battle during World War II versus the Axis and the Allies. So anyway, we gathered some food and other supplies, and we drive toward the location that we had mentioned. Unfortunately though, it had started to rain about halfway through our journey, which almost canceled our photo opportunity. But we thought, well, we should just deal with the rain. After all, we made it this far, and we don't want to waste our day. Anyway, the rain clouds had been broken as we ended up arriving, which the parking area we parked in was completely abandoned. Anyway, once we have unloaded our backpacks and cameras, well, we began walking down one of the trails which featured plenty of photo opportunities. One in particular was this really old tree that had a bunch of names sketched on it, some from as early as the 1930s. Anyway, I'll save you all the boring details, and I'll skip to what exactly happens. As we are about to leave, we ended up noting what looked to be like an abandoned cabin. Now, because we were currently on top of a hill, we weren't able to see it when we first arrived. We thought it was pretty interesting, so Lucas and I make our way toward the cabin. Not so much for photos, since the assignment did not call for cabins. It was more so for our own curiosity's sake. Once we arrive, we notice trash and debris everywhere, with some food wrappers that looked as if they had been placed there hours prior to our arrival. This should have raised some serious alarms, but we ignore them anyway and head inside to see if we could find anything interesting. Nothing, just a bunch of wood and more debris. This, however, was when things suddenly changed. We began to hear noise, along with the sound of people talking. We take a peek from inside to one of the small cracks, and we see 5 men with large hoodies on. Some of them had backpacks with them. Our first thought was maybe they just might be camping out here. But out of nowhere, Lucas sneezes, which, of course, grabs the attention of the 5 men. Way to go, Lucas. I curse at Lucas for revealing our location, but that would be the least of our concerns. Well, what happens next is that one of the men brandishes a gun, and this was when things started to get scary because they're surrounding our only possible exits. Well, with no time to waste, Lucas and I book it out of the back as we hear the men yelling and footsteps keeping up. Soon after, we hear one of the most horrifying things that we had experienced out there in the wild, a gunshot. Actually, we hear one of the gunshots pass right by us as it smashes right into a nearby tree. But here's the strange part. After running for another 10 seconds or so, we no longer saw them, but that didn't stop us from running as we thought they were still behind us. But the thing is, when we made it to our car, those creeps were no longer chasing us. In fact, just as soon as they had arrived, they had gone missing. Needless to say, we made it back to the dorm and we ended up calling the police. And I kid you not, literally a few days later, there was a story in the news about somebody being murdered out there, and they had a gunshot to their head. When my friend and I found out about that, we promised ourselves that we would never go out into those woods, or out into the woods by ourselves in general, ever again. Now, yeah, I get it. This story might not be as scary as some other ones you might hear, but the context, along with the location, adds to the nightmare fuel. I was returning from work with some Chick-fil-A, ready to chow down on my chicken sandwich, when I see somebody trying to open my front window. I live with one other roommate, so I just assumed it was them. Bear in mind, it's roughly 7:30 p.m. in October, so it's already dark at the time. "Don't tell me you lost that key that soon, Erica. How clumsy can you be?" I said. As a quick side note, we had just recently created a new set of keys since all the old ones went missing. Anyway, it was not my friend Erica at all. It was a man who I'd never seen before in my life. "Excuse me, sir, can I help you?" He looked like he was in his late 30s or so. He had blonde, greasy brown hair and was tall and lanky. "I was just checking to see if John was home." "I'm sorry, but nobody by that name lives here at all. I think you've got the wrong house." He kept on insisting this John person lived there, saying he owed him money and that he wasn't going to leave until he got paid. It's during the conversation that Erica steps out of her room and comes to open the front door, as she's curious to the commotion. "Hey, Erica, do you know some guy named John or something? The man says he owes him money." "No, I don't." "Dude, you got the wrong house," Erica said, as we stood there staring at the front door from inside the living room. Moments later, we hear the man knocking at the window for a couple of more minutes before he then leaves. We didn't call the police because he hadn't caused any sort of serious disturbance. Just how naive we were. Fast forward about 3 weeks later, and I was once again arriving back from work. It was Tuesday, which was trash day, and we had just taken out the garbage bins in the morning. However, it was my turn to bring them into the backyard, as Erica had done so the last week. Now, in order to do so, I had to unlock the back gate. So when I reach said gate, I reach for the lock, but the gate is pushed wide open. Very strange. Maybe Erica had forgotten to lock it. I tried not to think about it. I wanted to be done because it was really hot that day, and I couldn't wait to get into my room, which had air conditioning. Right as I walk into the backyard, however, I see him. Remember that man who was looking for John? He's trying to pry open one of my windows with a knife. "Excuse me, but can you please explain what you're doing out here?" "Oh, it's you again. Didn't I tell you? John owes me money, and if he's not coming out here, I'll go inside and get the money by force." I yet again reminded him that there is no John living here. And that's when he snaps. He starts to curse at me before saying he would come after me and stab me if I didn't leave him alone. The joke was on him, however. I ended up telling him police were already on the way. And just as he's leaving, a police cruiser and 2 officers are just pulling up into my neighborhood. I went ahead and pointed in his direction, and they follow him. All that happened next was they placed him in the back of their car, and they said they would call me back if they needed any more information. They, however, never did call me back, and neither myself or Erica have seen him since. Edit. I want to believe that maybe I might have been on some sort of drugs because of the way he was acting. Since, let's face it, no normal person is going to come after you with a knife claiming they need to see some guy named John, right? Who just so happens to live at your address. This happened not that long ago, and we were invited to a close relative's house for dinner. There were 9 older teenagers and 6 kids, and all the parents and kids decided to go to the park, as it was a hot, sunny day and the kids were constantly nagging the parents to take them to the park. The 9 of us decided to stay because we were in the middle of watching a movie in the front room. Now, the house layout was different to other houses on the street. As you walked in the front door, there were stairs to the left leading to a landing where the rooms and bathrooms led off from there. Now, as you walk straight down a long corridor, you reach a set of doors. One is for the kitchen, one for the living room, and one for a small closet used for coats, shoes, and the filter and pump for the fish pond. Through the kitchen, there was another door leading to the conservatory, which could also be accessed through the back area of the front room. The room was really large and was split into 2, a living/cinema room, as well as a dining area. We were in the front watching a movie, and the curtains were closed because it was sunny and the light was disturbing us. Our oldest cousins were upstairs in one of the rooms using their phones. They had done the same things with the curtains upstairs. Now, as the movie was nearly finished, I saw a shadow in the garden at the far side of the conservatory. I ignored it, and I continued watching. The sound of the movie was not that loud as our older cousins, and they told us to keep the sound down because they needed to hear if we called them. But again, I saw the shadow and looked to see what it was. There were no trees in the garden, nor in either of the neighbors' gardens, so I realized it can't be a tree. I looked closer, and then I heard my cousin scream. She walked to the kitchen to put the snacks and drinks away, and saw the figure standing in the corner of the conservatory outside looking at her. She locked the doors at the back, and my older cousins came down the stairs asking what had happened. The person hadn't seen my older cousins come down, and they assumed that we were on our own. He started to rattle the doorknob trying to open it. We all then ran up, leaving our older cousins downstairs to sort out the situation. They called the police, and the man had managed to enter the conservatory. He looked around to see if he could spot us. He didn't though, and continued to break the back door which led to the conservatory. My oldest cousin, who was 19 at the time, went as discreetly as he could to the kitchen to grab all the knives he could, so that way they could defend themselves, as well as make sure the intruder wasn't armed. He still had not seen my older cousins and tried to enter, but then the sound of the police siren alerted him, and he made a run for it and managed to escape. The officers entered the house and entered to check the back door and the pathway behind the back fence of the house. With no luck, they returned home, and our parents had also been told of what had happened. The officers asked if anyone had seen him, and my cousin and I gave a description of what we saw. Fast forward a few weeks later, and a similar incident had happened one street down from my cousin's house, and the intruder was caught. Our parents were told. And actually, recently, I found out that the man was on a National Criminal Predator Register list and was charged with some pretty crazy crimes. A lot of these included crimes against children. Now, I still wonder to this day if my cousin hadn't screamed when she saw him and my older cousins hadn't called the police. Well, what would have happened to us? And what would he have done? Now, just for some perspective for you all, I'm a 17-year-old girl. I'm 5'4", and I'm a little bit on the heavier side, but I'm perfectly healthy, all things considered. I have 3 younger sisters at the ages of 14, 10, and 7, and 2 older sisters turning 26 and 27 this year, who both live in Arizona. I live in Michigan, 2,000 miles away from them. Anyway, I do live with my mom, stepdad, who's my younger sister's father, and his dad as well. We recently bought a house, and we have been fixing it since it was a 2-unit apartment instead of 1-family home, and some wires were spliced along with a giant hole in the roof of the garage, and there was pretty bad mold in the bathroom as well. Southeast Michigan landlords, am I right? Anyway, I digress. At the time of this event, I was in a special facility, a GED testing center, where instead of being taught like normal with lectures and classwork, we do the work ourselves to earn the credits we didn't earn in normal public school. So, saying that, Most of the students here are not much younger than I am. Maybe, I'd say a year or so younger than me. Most of them are 18 to 40 plus, some with kids, currently pregnant, or just needing their diploma to land themselves in a decently paying job. Saying that as well, some other people are there simply for the fact that they have behavioral issues, and they all have failed in some way. I myself totally failed my junior year and couldn't get the credits I needed to graduate, so this is why I'm here. I actually needed 22 credits to graduate in public high school, but I only have 10. Here, I only needed 18 credits to get my diploma, so I technically only needed 8 more credits. I decided to ride my bicycle from home to school, seeing as it was only 18 blocks, which translates to a little over a mile and a half, and not that much of a bicycle ride really. I noticed that some houses were rather lively with people sitting on their porches in the afternoon, as they were talking and laughing amongst themselves. But in the mornings it was quiet besides the morning birds and the busy road which I can hear 5 blocks parallel to where I was riding from. Another busy road didn't show up for another several blocks, so I casually ride my bicycle every day through that area. And there was nobody else awake yet at the time, and I had that street to myself, on the right side of the course. One morning, it was sometime after Halloween I'd say, I'm heading to school from home, and I'm in that quiet area. And my school doesn't officially start until 8:15, when the first bell rings for everybody to get to class, and so I left my house around 7:20, enough to take my time before I get there. While I noticed sounds, since a couple of mornings there had been a few cars and trucks barreling out of an alleyway next to the houses, it's almost hitting me since they aren't paying attention. So I started to become more diligent in being aware of what I hear and see, and I hear something behind me, like a low rumble of an old truck, when it's just actually at a crawling speed. I looked behind me for a moment to see who exactly it was, and it was a couple of strangers in an old Ford pickup with regular Michigan rust and dented sides. They looked much older than me, 40s, mustache and a mullet style going on with their black and gray greasy hair. They were skinny, that much I could tell, because that sunken look on their face had said it all. One had a cigarette tucked behind his ear. That's how close they were that I could see it. And they had these beady dark eyes that were watching me too intently for my comfort. So I cranked up the setting on my bike, and even though it was harder to pedal, I gained more speed and was riding a moderately, evenly fast pace. A couple of blocks later, I turned to check on them, and they're still right behind me. They're chugging along a fraction faster, as I had a bicycle with adjustable chains. I curse under my breath, opting to pedal a bit faster, and I come up to the busy street that runs across my path. I stop and I ignore the guys, thinking maybe they're just going to someone else's house or to work, and I want to make sure they don't hit me, even though there's plenty of room for them to pass me. I try to look both ways, but they were so dangerously close to lining the cab of their truck with the curb on either side of us, I couldn't actually see past them. These dudes were being extra special and extra annoying, and I sighed backing up and looking again, both ways mind you, when I go fast across the street, barely missing a semi and a Ford Explorer. The street was busy, so I was hoping I could get to school before they ended up getting the chance to stop at me. I was wrong though. I had 7 more blocks to go, and I relaxed, panting and trying to calm down. My legs seriously ached. The next few moments were quiet, until I can hear something. Then at that moment, the creeps were accelerating fast towards me. I stopped, and I was in the middle of the road, putting my kickstand up and standing there with my arms crossed. I'm a rather loud person when I have to be, and I know how to get people's attention. So we got close, and I was rather loud saying this once he stopped and put the truck on park, and one of them got out, probably to try and meet me closer. "What do you want? I'm trying to go to school. Why are you following me?" He looked confused for a moment, He stumbled for words at that point. I'm surprised he stopped. I had my arms crossed across my chest, and I stood as straight and as tall as I could, trying to look angry, but looked probably as neutral as possible while my tone range with anger and frustration sounded out. I just wanted to ask if you, I wanted to ask to see if you wanted a ride in my friend's truck. The guy's voice sounded as if he had been a lifetime smoker. You smelled like alcohol, and now I can smell the smoke too. I tried my best to look as upset as possible. He spoke like he had been a child caught in a lie. Typical of people who have had the courage to do whatever behind something like a large truck rather than the courage to talk to people face to face. AKA stalker tendencies. My experience with that is for a later story though. What's wrong with you? I just told you I'm going to school. Leave me alone. I don't know you at all. And with that, I go and get back on my bicycle, and off I go to school. I rode down that 7 blocks while the guy stood there and stared. The truck didn't make a move at all to go after me, so I got to school without being chased. Locking my bicycle up at the rack, I went inside and got my breakfast before I started to retell this story to my friends, as I had breakfast with them in the cafeteria. Anyway, the day goes by, and I retell it to a couple of my teachers. They actually offered to drive me home, but I declined since I lived out of the way from them, and it was going to be too big for my bicycle to fit in their vehicles. It wouldn't fit in any of the cars or vans at all. I did thank them, however. They were nice people, and I trust them. So I ride home, and no sign of the creeps, or any time after that. Now I am enjoying my summer break, and I'm going on rides with my friends. So to the weird guy who tried to get me to go in your friend's truck, don't let me catch you stalking or following anyone else, or I might not be so nice next time, and cops will be called. This happened to me last spring. I live in a quiet and wealthy part of North London, and I attend a very academic all-girls school in my neighborhood. Now, since my school is really academic, we were required to complete the Bronze Duke of Edinburgh. It's like a program that gives you extra credit in life. It's as a part of the school curriculum. And also, I guess you could say, as much as I didn't want to do it, I really didn't have much choice in the matter. So our school is divided into 6 buildings, 4 with only classrooms, a drama department, the music block, and the 6th front building, with the sports department on the first floor. I believe in America the 6th form are the junior and senior years. The sports department also has a huge sports hall, a bunch of offices, and a rather small playing field. The playing field is at the very back of the school campus and is never really used much. Our first ever expedition for Duke of Edinburgh was coming up in a couple of weeks' time, and we all felt pretty confident about it. But since we were a useless bunch of teenagers, our teachers thought that it would be helpful for us to practice setting up and sleeping in the tents overnight. I didn't really like the sound of that at all. It is so utterly creepy to stay in school overnight on some little playing field at the far end of the campus. But my parents signed my permission slip, so what can I really say? So the day the sleepover rolled around, we had a double PE lesson that afternoon, during which we went down to that creepy playing field to practice setting up the tent, so that the night wouldn't be totally chaotic. The most disturbing part about that field was that it faces an abandoned building. Now, even though it was separated by a stone wall, it still looked weird to say the least. It was one of the only abandoned houses in the neighborhood. The creepy house was ginormous and made out of red brick. We sat down in a semicircle. Meanwhile, the teachers explained to us how to set everything up. I was sitting in between my best friend, let's call her Kate, and my close friend, let's call her Izzy. So Izzy was making an abnormal number of dirty jokes, referring to the teacher's speech about setting up the tent. I'm not gonna lie, they made it really easy for us. So Izzy and I are sitting there and laughing like Two absolute idiots. Meanwhile, everyone else was listening in silence until one of the teachers said that they would give us detention if we didn't behave. We giggled a little bit more, but eventually we settled down. It was starting to get very boring though. Our semicircle faced the abandoned building, so I couldn't really help my eyes wandering there every few minutes. I was eagerly waiting for the talk to end, but that's when something in the background caught my eye. It was a figure standing at one of the top-story windows in the abandoned building. I couldn't see whether it was a man or a woman at the time, because my eyesight is bad. All I really knew was that the person was wearing something really dark, like a hoodie or something. I looked at the blurry silhouette for a while, and it seemed like the shadow was staring directly at me. Naturally, I started freaking out a little bit, so I nudged Izzy, saying, "Oh my god, look!" First she looked at me, and then at the window that I pointed at. But when I looked up, right after Izzy, I saw the opaque curtains move a bit, but nobody was there anymore. Now obviously, neither of them believed it and started teasing me. I laughed it off, but I still felt a little bit nervous, I'm not gonna lie. We then attempted setting up our tents, and our lesson came to an end. We came to school in the evening, and it was really weird seeing this school without any students in it. But as I was approaching the field, I saw Kate, so I felt a lot better now. I was in the same tent as her because she was in my group for the expedition. We then later discussed all our teenage girl stuff as we tried to go to sleep. I often had trouble getting to sleep, even in my own bed. As expected, I was not able to fall asleep easily in the tent. So I kept on going through my phone until it was really late, and I was sure that everyone else was fast asleep, including Kate. I was starting to drift off at around roughly 2 a.m., but then it started to rain, and it was in that moment that I understood that I should have been listening to the teacher's explanation of how to correctly put up a tent, instead of Izzy's dirty jokes because her tent was starting to fill up with water. I imagined that we probably hadn't zipped up the outer layer of the tent properly, so I gathered every bit of strength that I had left, and I climbed outside, leaving my phone in the process. I struggled for a while, but I ended up successfully zipping up the tent. By the time I'd finished, I was soaking wet, so I decided to grab a dry hoodie from my PE kit. We stored our sports kits inside the PE department, which had been left open in case we needed to use the bathrooms. The halls were pitch black, so I was getting really creeped out at this point. Thus I went into the changing room, switched the light on, then changed into my dry hoodie. When I pushed down on the door handle in order to leave, for some reason it was stuck at this point, and it wouldn't move. It felt as if somebody was holding the handle on the other side. At this point, I started to freak out. So me being the way I am, I asked quietly, "Hello?" No response. Even though I was quite scared, I could be savage and was also really strong too. This time around I asked in a very firm, clear voice, "Is there anybody there?" I'm not exactly sure what my logic was at the time. Like, did I actually think he was going to say, "Yeah, hi, I'm Peter. Do you want a sandwich?" But again, there was no response. I started trying to wiggle the door handle free. So hard, in fact, it actually came off in my hand, which I thought was extremely odd since the building was very new, and the person didn't have to hold the door anymore because I was stuck and couldn't open the door, even if I really tried to. At this point, the lights went off in the changing room. The situation seemed as if though it was straight out of a scary movie. But reality was catching up to me as I understood that somebody really was on the other side of the door because the light switch to the changing rooms was outside. Now I was about to have an actual panic attack. So without thinking, I started banging and kicking at the door. Meanwhile, I'm screaming, "Help! Help!" at the top of my lungs. I'm desperately just hoping that a teacher or even a security guard would hear me. But I think that it only angered the other person as I saw the part of the door which the handle was built onto. Well, it slowly began to turn. I immediately run to the other side of the changing room. It was like 2 meters away from me, and locked myself in one of the shower cells, which was the first place that I could actually think of. As soon as I had locked the door behind me, I heard the door opening and heavy footsteps entering the room, which convinced me that it was a man. I tried to silence my breathing with my hand, but I don't think I did a very good job at that, as the footsteps soon stopped right before my shower cell. At first, I couldn't quite comprehend what he might be doing, but then I see an eye glaring at me through one of the gaps in between the door hinges. This was the most scared I'd ever been in my life. I screamed like there was no tomorrow. I was so lost because I didn't understand what I could possibly do to get out of here. But here's the thing. This is when it hit me. I was hoping I was strong enough to pull this off, so I swung the door open as hard as I could, slamming the man in the face. I knew the door was open because I didn't hear it closing, and if he closed it, he would be stuck too. So I run out of the changing room and down the hallway. Meanwhile, I'm screaming so loudly that my own ears start to ring. The building was about 20 meters away from the playing field, so I run as fast as I could, meanwhile screaming at the top of my lungs, which woke up the majority of the people asleep in the tents. I had a panic attack and couldn't breathe for a good 10 minutes. Later, I explained to the teachers what had happened. They called our version of 911, but the man was never found, probably because they had given him plenty of time to escape. Everyone was sent home straight after that. But I remember clear as day that as I was running away, I turned around and saw the figure in the dark hoodie that I had seen standing in that window earlier in the day. That night still haunts me, even to this very day.
So that was the last story for today's episode. If this was the first time you joined us, then do consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. That way you'll be notified of all the future uploads coming here to the channel. Also, make sure to leave a like rating if you enjoyed it, and leave a comment telling me what you all thought. Also, if you yourself have a scary story that you'd like to share, then send it in with my user submissions email, which appears on screen on my videos, tcfnarrations@gmail.com. Now, if you're looking for more of the Creepy Fox, then check out all the other videos I got on my channel. There's so much narration content that I'm sure you're going to enjoy. I've also got some exclusive Scary Stories narration episodes. If you'd like to listen to those, then for as little as $2 a month, you can become a Creepy Fox channel member and gain access to 10+ hours of extra additional content. I also got some cool merch which is featured down below. There's shirts, stickers, sweaters, coffee mugs, you name it. I got a lot of things that you might like, so check it out, see if you might find something on the Creepy Fox shop. Anyway, that is gonna go ahead and do it for today. Thank you so much everyone for watching today, and I'll go ahead and catch you all on the next episode. Until then, take care and have yourself an amazing day.